You feel bored right now? Maybe not this exact second, but you know the feeling. The afternoon stretches out in front of you. Nothing urgent, nothing broken, nowhere you have to be. And instead of feeling good, something underneath starts to itch. It's not a mood, that's a signal. And your brain, the same brain that can solve problems, plan for the future, imagine things that don't exist, is doing something very specific when it sends you that signal. Something scientists spent decades trying to understand. Because boredom isn't what it looks like from the outside. It isn't nothing happening. In 2012, psychologist John Eastwood at York University ran a series of studies trying to pin it down. His definition, when he finally landed on it, was this: boredom is the failure to engage attention with activity that is satisfying and that you feel you should be doing. Three conditions, not one. You need available activities, you need to find them unsatisfying, and you need a sense that you should be engaging. Pull any one of those out and you don't get boredom. You get something else. This is why boredom is different from rest. When you rest, you're not trying to engage. When you're bored, you're trying and failing. The attention system is reaching for something and not finding purchase. That reaching feeling, that low level restlessness, that's the actual experience of boredom happening in real time under the surface of whatever you're doing on your phone. And here's the part that surprised researchers: that reaching feeling is not passive. When you're bored, your brain doesn't go quiet, it goes looking. In 2014, neuroscientist Mary Helen Immordino Young published research showing that when the brain has nothing specific to do, it defaults into something called the default mode network. This is a set of regions that activate specifically during rest and during self-directed thought. Planning, imagining, replaying memories, thinking about other people. When you stare out the window and your mind drifts, this is the system running underneath. And here's what nobody told you: this system is doing some of the most sophisticated processing your brain does all day. Studies on creativity consistently find that people generate more novel ideas after periods of mind wandering than after periods of focused work. Your unconscious is integrating information, drawing connections between things you haven't consciously linked yet, building something it hasn't shown you yet. The boredom isn't the problem. The problem is that you can't feel the work happening. But boredom doesn't stay comfortable. And the way it escalates tells you something important about what it actually is. Psychologists James Dankert and Colm O'Hora spent years studying what happens when people can't escape boredom. When subjects were placed in situations with genuinely nothing to do, no phone, no book, no task, their cortisol levels rose. Heart rate variability changed. The body began treating the situation as mild stress. Not dramatic, not an emergency, but a low-grade activation. In one study, participants were given the option to give themselves a mild electric shock rather than sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. A majority of men chose the shock. A quarter of women did. They chose pain over emptiness. That is not laziness. That is a system under pressure. Because boredom, when you look at it from the inside, is the brain telling you something is misaligned. You have capacity and nowhere to put it. You have energy and no target. You are, in the language your nervous system actually speaks, wasting something that could be used. For most of human history, that signal almost never fired. There was always something to do, something to hunt, something to repair, something to watch, something to worry about. Boredom as a chronic experience is, in evolutionary terms, extremely new. Your brain has no language for it. It only knows that nothing is being used, and nothing being used feels like dying. This is why boredom so reliably pushes people toward bad decisions. Researcher Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia has run studies connecting high boredom proneness with higher rates of risky behavior, substance use, and gambling. Not because bored people are reckless, but because the discomfort of boredom creates pressure for any kind of stimulation, and risky activities deliver stimulation fast. The brain doesn't care what satisfies the signal. It just wants the signal to stop. And this is the part where it gets strange. Because boredom doesn't just make you reach for stimulation, it also makes you reach inward. Psychologist Andreas Elpidoro argues that boredom has a function that gets overlooked when you're in the middle of it. His position is that boredom is a motivational state, not a failure state, a signal that tells you the current situation isn't giving you what you need, and that you should find something that does. The dissatisfaction isn't the problem, it's the point. In the same way that physical pain tells you something is damaging your body, boredom tells you something about the quality of your engagement. It's uncomfortable on purpose. Because an animal that was comfortable doing nothing would be outcompeted by one that felt driven to find something meaningful to do. Eastwood's research found something interesting about what separates people who use boredom productively from people who don't. The difference wasn't intelligence or creativity or access to interesting activities. It was attention regulation. People who could tolerate the discomfort long enough to direct their attention somewhere new used boredom as a springboard. People who couldn't redirect it immediately to distraction and return to the same state 20 minutes later. Boredom is pressure. What you do with it depends on whether you can hold it long enough to do something with it at all. There's a final layer here, and it reframes everything else. Boredom has a unique relationship with meaning. Studies by Sandy Mann and Rebecca Cadman at the University of Central Lancashire found that bored people performed significantly better on divergent thinking tasks afterward. Boredom, they argued, is a state that primes the brain to seek meaning. When you strip stimulation away, the brain starts asking a question it rarely gets space to ask. What actually matters here? The answer to that question, whenever it comes, tends to be more original than anything produced during busy, distracted attention. So when you feel bored, something specific is happening. Your brain is reaching and not finding grip. Your nervous system is registering that as low-level stress. And underneath all of it, something is asking a quiet question about what would actually be worth doing. Most people silence that question as fast as possible. The ones who don't are usually the ones who build something.